up, guys? Gons here with another video for the Face Like the Sun YouTube channel. This is another CERN watch video, keeping an eye on what's going on at CERN. Now, first, I just wanted to start off by saying thank you to everybody who's been watching my videos and sharing them, commenting on them. I really appreciate all of the interaction, and I haven't been able to keep up with all the comments. There's just too many of them coming in, and so I try to respond when I feel led to respond to certain people, but otherwise I do see most of the comments, but I just don't have time to respond to everything. But I really do appreciate it, and you know, I've really decided to put a lot more energy into this YouTube channel, so it's been really cool to see it grow, and the subscribership and everything else. Please continue sharing the videos, talk about it, and everything else. Now, on that front, there have been people that have stated, you know, you guys are just blowing things out of proportion. Why bring religion into science and stuff like that? Now, here's the deal with CERN and the Large Hadron Collider. Science itself has always been an outworking of the occult. In fact, if you watch Age of Deceit 2, Alchemy and the Rise of the Beast Image, I show how Hermeticism and alchemy have been at the heart of scientific breakthroughs throughout history. And those people that were known to make these breakthroughs, some of them openly admit that they got their information from not just Hermeticism, but spiritual beings and stuff. So there's nothing new about spirituality and science being one and the same, so to speak. Now, just to give more evidence that what CERN is doing is, in fact, opening portals or gateways into what appears to be other dimensions. There is an article by my good friend Josh Peck, who posted something called The Coming Technocalypse, CERN, Quantum Computing, and Particle Teleportation. Now, if you want to know how quantum physics in general is best explained by the biblical worldview, definitely check out Josh Peck's book, Quantum Creation. He gets into it. I mean, it's just quite amazing the way scientists avoid the obvious, that the universe is held together by God speaking it into existence. In fact, Josh shows in his book, Quantum Creation, that God is speaking at this very moment to keep creation together, which is quite amazing. So anyway, that being said, he recently came out with a book called Cherubim Chariots. We also have an interview on Canary Cry Radio. It's a 3-hour conversation. An hour and a half of it is good content. The rest of it is just silly banter. If you are a fan of the show Canary Cry Radio, you might enjoy it. Otherwise, you may think we are the most annoying people in the universe. So there's a link to that episode if you guys want to check it out. It also has time codes in case you want to skip through all the banter and get to the content. But in any case, he posted this article and he documented a few of the quotes made by scientists throughout the years to show and to prove that they're trying to open interdimensional portals. So this is a quote that he cited from Reuters back in 2010, quote, Guido Tonelli, spokesman for one of the CERN specialist teams monitoring operations in the vast subterranean LHC, said, probing for extra dimensions, besides length, breadth, height, and time, would become easier as the energy of the proton collision in it is increased in 2011. So again, more evidence that this is something that they are trying to do. Now, the CERN press offices itself stated, quote, as far as we know, we live in 4 dimensions, 3 of space and 1 of time. But experimentalists at the Large Hadron Collider are looking for evidence that the universe contains more than that. The existence of extra dimensions could explain some puzzling properties of the universe, end quote. And he cites several other places where it's been talked about that they are really trying to open dimensions. This is nothing new. And when it comes to mainstream entertainment, CERN has been at the center of many stories, including a movie called Decay, which is a zombie apocalypse film based on CERN. But then there's other stuff like Particle Fever that actually is a documentary. And there's movies like Angels and Demons that talk about it. But one show that was really interesting, I thought, is called Flash Forward. And in this show, something happens with the particle accelerator where the entire population on Earth all pass out. They fall asleep for 2 minutes. And during those 2 minutes, they have a vision of the future. And the entire show is leading up to that vision. And, you know, some things come true, some things don't. But it's a very interesting way to conjure up a story. And there's another movie called Random Quest. And in that movie, there's a character who is a physicist who is knocked unconscious during an experiment at the particle accelerator, which is CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, and he wakes up and finds himself in a parallel world. And it's sort of a love story drama that's surrounding that. So there are a lot of films, a lot of things out there about CERN in science fiction already, but consider this. Somebody asked in the comment section, why would demons need a man-made machine to manifest? And, I responded to that comment, if you can find it somewhere. But basically what I said was the same thing that people have been doing for a very long time with rituals, seances, and other workings. For example, Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard. Jack Parsons being the founder of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He single-handedly changed rocketry in the world, and especially in the United States. This is the same guy that is going out into the desert with L. Ron Hubbard, who is the founder of Scientology, and performing rituals called Babylon Working, trying to invoke the Whore of Babylon. So there's nothing new about scientists trying to conjure up things through rituals. And so what the Large Hadron Collider is just a ginormous ritual machine. And that's why it is concerning. But moving on here, I just wanted to point out a couple things. First off, CERN did fire up a test run last week. And here's an article from CERN itself. Injection tests make a splash. And basically they did a test run. They fired everything back up and it seemed to be working and things are going well. The commissioning with a beam is set to start on the 23rd of March. And actually the entire operation will not happen for another few months. So they pushed it back to, I think, May or June. I think they're just looking at, making sure everything's working and stuff like that. So that's an update in terms of straight from the CERN website. But I wanted to bring on somebody who has been looking at this from a very esoteric angle for a very long time. And this person's name is Chris. She is part of the End Times Matrix News. And she was cool enough to come on and talk about some of the things that she has been researching. And some of it may come across as just a little bit too esoteric or whatever, but I wanted to give her a platform for her to share some of her research for a few minutes. And so here we go. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
Pretty good. So I understand that you have been looking at CERN and keeping an eye on what's going on there for quite a while. Can you tell us about some of the things that you've learned about it and what your opinion of what CERN is?
Yes. I actually started out researching a lot of the ancient civilizations and, interested in ancient technology. So I was trying to find out what was going on. And, that's when I ran into Tim because he was a Christian and he had a point of view on these end times. Because, most Christians, they don't look into things about, astronomy and the alien agenda and all of those things. So when I started looking into those things, I was wondering, this is kind of crazy, why am I looking at this? And so I started to continue to research and look down that rabbit hole to understand the dynamics of these things that we have been pretty much purposely shut off in the world from the elite. I mean, they do these things worldwide with religion and, the Freemasonry and all of these things that they've structured the world over a long period of time to pretty much program us not to look in this direction. So I want to look in this direction. And I do believe that the Lord tells us to understand our enemy and to reveal the dark things. So I'll move on to CERN and what I think it is. So CERN, mixed into all of the research that I've done, I have realized that CERN is a replica of the universe. The seven fallen angels represent the Kabbalah tree and the planets and the gates. These seven fallen angels are worshipped by the elite and the occult, and the symbolism is everywhere. And once you understand the symbolism and the fallen angels and the zodiac and who they are, then you realize that these seven fallen angels that are worshipped, and they use all this trickery through the Aquarius age and the New Age religion and the Enlightenment and evolution, and they represent the seven chakras. But Jesus Christ is outside of that. I mean, he is in heaven and he is God. He has nothing to do with this CERN and this universal dynamics with all of these things that tie into ancient history and all of the things that they've done over the years through underground technology with the secret societies and the black government and the all of these things that connect to Saturn and Saturn worship. But what I've come to realize is that before the flood, Saturn, when he was Samuel in the garden and all of those things happened and he was worshipped, there was a flood. And what happened was he was resurrected as Jupiter through Ptah and the Egyptians, which are the Ogdod, which are the eight. And this is what they worship. And it's a little confusing because there's the Ogdod and the eight, but the seven, but that is because there was a resurrection to the underworld to Osiris, and there was a battle for the throne between Horus and Set. But these things are very important because they do tie into the zodiac, and they do tie into CERN, because CERN, when the Egyptians, their information came from Sanskrit. And Sanskrit is the oldest language, and they have the Sanskrit glass plates inside of CERN. They have the Shiva dancer that dances in the Ring of Fire, which represents the universe. And if you understand Mithraism and they worship Jupiter, that circle around Mithra that you see is the universe. And that is what they worship. And this is connected to all the angels that have fell that want to be worshiped as God. So to all that, there was another connection with Cernunnos. He was a stag god. And Cernunnos, there is a pillar of a boatman. And on that pillar of the boatman, that is representative of Jupiter. And so that pillar of the boatman is in honor of Jupiter. Everything is in honor of Jupiter as the resurrected Saturn of, Satan. So when we see the Vatican and all the obelisks all over the world, that represents the phallus of Osiris. If you know the story of Set and Osiris, the two brothers that represent the moon and the sun, those are two gates, the silver and the golden gate. That is what this is all about. I know it's a lot. I mean, I've studied this for so long, and it's so much, to understand this big picture. But this is what it all entails to, is that the zodiac, God put this on my heart, and even yesterday, just, confirming and showing me that this thing represents the zodiac, and Mithra was born from a primordial egg, which is an electronic force. It represents the Ankh of the Egyptians. And so when you see Mithra with the little cap that he's wearing inside of the zodiac, he was the primordial egg, but it also represents the primordial egg of Egypt. It's the same story, but that's what it represents. And so when you look at CERN, you think of it as the zodiac, and then you think of the God particle that they're trying to represent, and they're trying to open up a portal for this primordial egg to be born again with these eight spirits, that are the seven fallen angels. So this is my take on it. This is what I understand that they're doing. And one of the most interesting things about it is that the Egyptians, they had the solar boat of Ra. And this is who he represents too, the Antichrist. And he would go over the Milky Way on the boat through the 12 constellations, which is the zodiac. And he would do it during March and September. So I just find it very interesting that CERN is going to rev up the collider in March and in September, the same exact months that the boat of Ra, which they've already admitted themselves at CERN that this is the Tawar that they are trying to recreate so that way they can find Ra. And I'm sorry, I've tried to find that video. It's on a video where they say this. This is what they're trying to do. And they've already admitted themselves that they're trying to open up a portal. And so this is what they want. They worship this fallen angel that represents all the seven fallen angels as their God. And this is what they're trying to do, to resurrect him through the CERN, through the God particle.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when you're talking about the seven fallen angels, where does that come from? And does it have anything to do with Revelation 17, where it talks about the seven kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come?
Yes, it does, because 8 represents Mercury, and Mercury represents Saturn, and 8 is the frequency of Saturn, and 7 represents Lucifer. It's a long story, but Venus, okay, so Venus and Thoth represents Mercury, which is the messenger, but Venus is the resurrected Saturn. So I have pictures of that showing in Egypt that's in a Brooklyn museum with Isis being resurrected as a man. So Thoth and Isis was the resurrected Horus, which became Osiris. That's where you get the 8, and that's who they worship. As they worship him as Saturn, as the resurrected Jupiter through Horus. And so it's a very complicated thing to understand. It has to do with the birthing of the planets in the netherworld and the abyss, and the connections with the alchemy and the gods of the underworld. And this represents the 7 chakras. So each, like Neptune represents Poseidon, and Saturn represents Satan, and he represents Enki. And so when you have the Sumerian 7 gods, anyone can look that up, the Sumerian 7 gods. And then they had the twins, which were Castor and Pollux. And those Gemini twins represent Agenor and Belus. And they are split twins on one side of Ham's bloodline and one side of Japheth's bloodline. And so it's confusing because I'm talking about above and below at the same time, because below, that's what they represent, and above, they represent the Gemini twins, but the planets in themselves represent the fallen angels. So it's kind of hard for us because, we have to research these things to understand them from a point of view of the Bible. When the Bible talks about the fallen angels and the Nephilim and the demons, and demons do possess people. And, the Bible does talk about those things, and the Bible does talk about the fallen. But you're right on, with that verse. I've already have all that information written down, and I've done a lot of studies. And that verse does represent Mercury and Venus for sure. Mercury and Venus represent the number 7 and the number 8. So through the Kabbalah, what they've done is the Titans, in the days of Noah, there will be the return of the Titans, and those are the giant Nephilim, and they're the parents of the Olympians, which represent the inner planets, and the outer planets represent the Titans. And so if we believe the Bible, and we understand that it says that in the days of Noah, so shall the end of time will be. So if that's true and the Bible's true, then there's going to be Nephilim. And if that's true and they're trying to resurrect the Antichrist through CERN, that's what they're doing. And I know that Anthony Patch, he's the author of Diamonds, he told me that he has some information he's been discussing about the glass plates having some clothing on it. And so we were trying to find more information. Is that clothing Adam's clothing? Because we know that Nimrod, based on factual information, Nimrod wore Adam's clothing, and he was the king of Babylon. And that Tower of Babel actually was never finished, but it swirled like a spiral, and that spiral represents the universe. And so it has to align with the planets, and they do some sort of magic. They use whatever they use to try to recreate the Garden of Eden, if you will. These fallen angels, the trees in the garden, one was the tree of consciousness and one was the tree of immortality. And Adam and Eve took on the tree of consciousness. And when they did that, that tree represents DNA. And so just like the caducees of Thoth, that's what that represents. And that actually represents the universe as well. It also actually represents CERN.
Well, that is really fascinating, really interesting research. Nice work, Chris. Where can people go to learn more about the things you have uncovered in your research?
Our website is endtimesmatrixnews with a Z.com. And if you want to find my blog, it's Star Monkey's Big Picture at WordPress.com. And then we have two Twitters. One is Star Monkey, StarMonkie, Star Monkey 2, I'm sorry. And the other one is at End Times Matrix.
So there you go. Check that stuff out. Now, I know some of you guys might be thinking, whoa, that was way out there. That doesn't make any sense to me, especially people that are familiar with biblical prophecy and have done some studies in the Bible and stuff like that. You know what? Keep an open mind. You know, the motto at Canary Cry Radio is think outside the cage. And part of what we want to do is not necessarily agree or disagree with the research of different people. If you are seeking the Lord in these things, I think we can at least hear them out. And we may disagree, we may agree, but when there are fellow brothers and sisters in Christ looking into these issues, I think it's important to let them speak out and let them at least share some of the things they found. But the bigger point here that I think is important to make is that there is an undeniable connection between CERN and the occult. There's almost no denying that the scientists at CERN are trying to do something. Now, you got to keep in mind too, I'm not saying these scientists are all evil. I'm not saying that they're all sitting there like Dr. Evil with their pinky in their mouths and, you know, rubbing their hairless cats, talking about taking over the world or conjuring the Antichrist or anything like that. I don't think that's what's going on. But number one, spiritually, with man doing things in the flesh, it's automatically leading in that direction so that Bible prophecy is fulfilled. God knows how things will be fulfilled, and this could be one path to that fulfillment. But the other thing to remember is that, yes, there probably are some people that are behind these projects who have this idea and know about the nefarious activity of what they're trying to do. And ultimately, they are deceived by Satan to follow in their own pride and their own desires. And, you know, who knows if Satan promised them the kingdoms of the world, just like when the devil tempted Jesus Christ and promised him the same thing in exchange for worship. So keep an open mind here. Now, one last thing I want to just bring up, and this may have nothing to do with CERN, but I thought it was interesting, and so I want to point it out before we wrap it up here. There was a meteorite crash in the woods in Switzerland that was recorded on the 15th of March, which is Sunday. Now, this is really interesting because, of course, you know, they fire up the Large Hadron Collider. It's not fully operational yet, but they definitely did turn it on Friday the 13th. And then we have Pi Day 3.1415 on Saturday, and then 3:15 on Sunday, we get this footage of this large fireball-like thing coming down from the sky. And hey, who knows? Maybe this was part of something that was being conjured from CERN and the Large Hadron Collider. I have no idea, but I'm reporting it because I find it interesting, and I'm sure there will be more information coming out about this alleged meteorite that was seen over the skies of Switzerland. So hopefully this CERN watch gave you guys a little bit to think about, a little bit to consider. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of people doing great research. Anthony Patch, who Chris mentioned, is another person that's been looking at CERN for a very long time. And some of the things that she mentioned, like the clothes that Nimrod was wearing, this is very interesting. There are some biblical passages that seem to support that idea. There are definitely extra biblical texts that support this idea that Nimrod was wearing some sort of cloak or some sort of garment that was initially made for Adam. So perhaps that has something to do with this idea of Nimrod becoming a Gibborim as recorded in Genesis 10. So all these things to consider, but man, we live in some exciting times. Just remember that there's nothing to fear here. God is in full control. He is allowing these things to happen. We are not given a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. And that's what's important here. Keep your eyes on Christ. Remember that Jesus told us when these things start to happen, look up, for your redemption draws nigh. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, guys. God bless.